Thank you for having me with you guys. Well, basically your introduction was very nice. I just don't think I'm a super genius. I think it's just I'm a normal person, and then I just put the time and the effort to create this kind of thing, and then things start working out. So basically, let me introduce myself. I'm Álvaro Trigo. Well, I'm going to be talking in this talk about full page, and then a little bit about fullsnap, which is my new project that I'm working on right now. You can follow me on Twitter. My username is imac2, and well, this is where we are going to be talking on today. So first of all, I'm going to give you guys a little introduction about those projects that I'm working on. Then I'm going to talk about how I had to reinvent the wheel sometimes to create full page. Then how I said bye to jQuery, and then how I kept on reinventing things again, and then what about open source and how I started the editor. So basically, well, I guess like I said before, I'm a web developer. I was working in the UK for 5 years until I quit my job to dedicate myself full time to this open source library and to all around it. So my projects in GitHub had right now more than 38k stars. And then, well, I'm just a full-time creator, or that's at least what I consider myself to be. Yeah, what is fullpage? So fullpage is basically an open source library that started as a jQuery plugin, and then it became a JavaScript library. So I got rid of the jQuery dependency. Basically, it's a snap scroll effect. The easiest way for you to understand what is this, if you haven't tried it before, is just go into Google and look for full page, and then click on the first result, and then you'll see what is the effect. Basically, it's kind of like a slider at full screen that allows you to slide vertically as well as horizontally with the single snap of the mouse. It got quite popular at first because it was released exactly at the same time that Apple releases the iPhone 5C, which website was using a very similar effect. So people started to look for solutions to do this kind of things, and there wasn't any at the moment. So that's how it became popular. I had to make a website for the company I was working at the moment, and I had to create this from the scratch. So that's when I think about creating a library for other people to have it easier than I had. I also provide different wrappers for different libraries like Vue, Angular, and React. So you can use full page on those using these kind of wrappers to make things much easier. And I also provide some plugins for WordPress. Right now we have a plugin for Elementor Builder as well as for Gutenberg. And we are about to release one for Divi. It's a freemium library. So basically you can use it for free for open source. It's under the GPL version 3 license, which means that if you want to use it in non-GPL products or projects, you would need to get a professional license, a commercial license, in order to use it. I sell it quite cheap. It's like 9 British pounds, which is around $10, $11. And then you have different options. And also some extensions that you can add in order to improve the default behavior or add some features. So right now it has like 31,000 likes in GitHub and an average of 66,000 downloads per week in NPM. That's without counting other kind of downloads directly from GitHub or Bowl or any other kind of package management. It has been used by big companies like Google, Sony, the BBC, National Geographic, Coca-Cola, British Airways, these kind of companies, and many others that I don't know, of course. More than 120 people has contributed to this open source project. And so you can have an idea of the amount of work that I can have sometimes. I have been closing more than 3,000 issues on GitHub alone, without counting Stack Overflow, email, Twitter, and so on. And there has been more than 1,800 commits. So why using full page? Well, first of all, it's cross-browser compatible down to Internet Explorer 9. So this is because when I was developing the website for my company, one of the requirements was that it should be compatible with Internet Explorer 9. So then I created this library with this in mind, which is not very common for this kind of effects, especially nowadays. It has more than 50 plus configurable options that you can combine in endless ways. It's keyboard accessible. It has different responsive modes, so you can turn it off on small screen devices, or you can just convert the horizontal slides into vertical sections, and then you can do, well, many other things that I'm not going to get into here. You can have also the URL history, so you can click the back button and then you would slide up or down, lazy loading, callbacks, different CSS state classes, and then of course the developer API, so you can use functions in order to drive the user directly to a specific slide, or you can turn off the auto scrolling, or perhaps you want to disable scrolling until they do some action. So you have like a complete API for developers that you can use, and that makes it quite powerful. And then, well, other small things like autoplay on post media elements. Whenever you you land on the section, then the media elements like videos can start playing, and then when you leave, they can automatically pause, and so on. It's lightweight. It's less than 40K kilobytes, which makes it very interesting as well, because it's not a huge package. So why did I say that I have to reinvent the wheel? Because, well, this is literally what I had to do. The mouse wheel is something that we get for granted. When we get into the browser and when we scroll down using the mouse wheel, then the page scrolls down. But this is not exactly what happens when we want to achieve what we did with full page. So first of all, when I was using jQuery, what I was doing was just animating the top property of the page. This is an example of how to do it. It's quite easy. You just but the problem with this approach is that it's not very the performance is not great. Animating the top property is not ideal, and then, well, underneath you are just dealing with JavaScript to do this. So basically, on every frame, you will have to scroll a bit down the page and then keep on doing that until you reach your destination. And you do that by just modifying the top property. And, well, the solution to this, to make it much more smooth, was to use CSS3 animations. So to do that, you basically have to apply the translate 3D property to the body of the page or the wrapper or whatever you want to move. And then you just apply a transition to that wrapper. So this way, the transformation it's very smooth, and it takes advantage of hardware accelerated graphics using the GPU of the computer. So this is what made full page a bit more interesting, because it's a very smooth transition that it wasn't really very popular back then. People kept on animating the top property or the scroll property, and that doesn't get the same kind of result. But of course, some people say, hey, I want to use this effect, I want to use the snap feature, but I still want to have the scroll bar. I want my users to be able to move up and down, or I want to take advantage of the scroll bar for certain things, like if you want to do parallax effects, or if you want to perhaps use lazy loading, or just get rid of some side effects that you can get sometimes when dealing with mobile phones and the address bar on those devices. So to do that, you will have to, well, this is using jQuery. The examples I'm putting here are using jQuery. It's just animating the scroll top property of the body and the HTML. And then basically you would also have to, at the same time, prevent the default scroll that is done by default by the browser. So what you have to do is listen to the mouse wheel event, and then you just have to prevent the default scrolling. And by combining these two things, you would get a page that has a scroll bar and that can snap to the next section or the next slide. I don't know if you, I don't want to go very quick, but I think, well, this example is quite small, so there's not much else to see, I guess. But if you have any questions, just feel free to ask whenever I finish the talk. So other people say, well, I want the page to be able to freely scroll the page, but whenever I stop in the middle of two sections, I want to snap to the section that is the closest one, right? So in this case, well, the approach is quite easy as well. Basically, you just listen to the scroll event, and then you just add a timeout. So every time that the scroll event gets fired, you clear that timeout. And whenever the scroll event stops firing is whenever this timeout is going to get triggered. And then in the timeout, you can say, well, after 500 seconds of inactivity, 500 milliseconds of inactivity, I want to scroll to the page that is active, for example. So this would create this effect. So you just listen to the scroll event, and whenever it's done, after 500 milliseconds, then you can do whatever you want. And in this case, we're scrolling to the page that has the active class. I'm not going to get into detail of how I added the active class, but well, this is something that it can be done very easily, also using the scroll event or any other technique. So at some moment, this was like 2 years ago, in 2018, I decided that it was time to get rid of jQuery. Many people were requesting this, and even though I was always a bit afraid of the transition, I thought it was time, and it was well, it was the thing that I had to do. So what were the struggles that I experienced on this transition? Basically, having to deal with Internet Explorer 9. I wanted to keep it compatible with Internet Explorer 9 because believe it or not, there are still some people out there who use Internet Explorer 9, especially in some developing countries or some old institutions. And that was one of the things. Then jQuery helpers. So basically, I had to kind of replicate sometimes the code that I was using in jQuery by using JavaScript. So for that, I created my own helpers. The jQuery isms. This is when you animate something in jQuery, you can choose an ism function. And this allows you to create the movement in different ways. I'm going to talk about those a bit later. So I'm not going to get too much into detail here. And then the testing. So I wanted to generate some tests so I would be sure that whenever I release a new library, I wouldn't break everything. So for Internet 9 compatibility, I used a lot these two websites. One is called you might not need jQuery.com. The one is called you don't need jQuery. The second one is a project in GitHub. The first one is a website. Of course, there are probably many ways of doing this. This is the one I chose. Maybe it's not the best one, maybe it's not the perfect one, but it's the one that worked for me. And I was not using transpilers at the moment, and I didn't want to because I wanted to have total control of the output code that those transpilers would generate. I didn't want my library to become bigger, like I don't know, 100K or something like that, because my purpose was keeping it small, keeping it simple, and then have total control of the output code. So using transpilers, I think, first of all, it wouldn't solve every problem because the transpiler doesn't help you to simulate the animated scroll top option of jQuery. And second of all, this problem, you don't have control over the output. So then, just as an example of one of the helpers that I usually use in my projects, instead of having to repeat all the time, document, query selector, all, whatever, I just create this little helper that is kind of similar to the selector function of jQuery. Basically, it takes two arguments. One is the selector and the other one is the context, in case you want to select something inside another element. And this also helps to reduce the output code, because when you combine the code, when you minify it, everything that is after the dot is not going to be able to get minified. So in this case, if you have document, query selector, all, the word query selector all will always stay there. And if you have that many times in the code, then you are adding kilobytes to the output. So this serves as a way to simplify the way I code, and also as a way to reduce the amount of code that it was generated on the minified file, making it smaller than if you don't use it. This is another example of the hash class. You can always use nowadays class list contains or class list add class or whatever. But if you want to be compatible with Internet Explorer 9, you have to use this kind of helpers, because otherwise, you have to use transpilers or whatever. And then, so that's what I was using for this. And then this is an example of a bit more complex function. This is the equivalent to the animate scroll top function of jQuery. So here you can see the things are getting a bit more complicated. I extracted this directly from the code that I'm using in Fullpage. I created another library for these kind of things, but basically, you can see how we have to call this function in a recursive way, and then just scroll a bit at a time. So here, maybe it's not the perfect example. I should have taken another one, because this is a bit, I'm using functions that are not here. But the thing is, you have to call it recursively, and every time you call it, then you have to increment a bit the scroll top property of the page. And then here's another example as well. Where is this? Ooh. Here, the extend function. So when using jQuery, it's very common to extend an object. You can have an object with default options, and then it's quite common to extend that object with the options that the user provides to the library. So there's not something out of the box to do this in JavaScript. So I also had to use this function to do so. And sometimes you get the functions from one of the websites that I mentioned, and they are not perfect as well. They still have little bugs, or they are not perfect for every scenario. So in this case, I remember having to modify this function a bit, because it was causing some memory leaks in the browser. So, and these are the easy functions that I was speaking about before. Basically, each of them allows you to create an animation with a different movement. Luckily, we were able to extract them from this website, which is, I think it belongs to jQuery. So basically, jQuery 1.3 or something like that allows you to, they give you like a file with all the functions to do this kind of thing. So I had to look for that, and they look something like this. Basically, it's a function. We have like a math equation there that, somehow it does the magic. And this is just in order to provide the visitors with the possibility of creating different animations if they are used to using jQuery animations as well. Of course, you can do this nowadays using CSS3. They also have different async functions, and you can create your own custom ones by using I think it's called the curve baser or something like that. There are also websites where you can create your own function, and then it gives you the function to use. And then for the testing, I was using jQuery again, which is kind of ironic, because I was trying to get use of jQuery, but then for the testing, I was using jQuery UI. It's not perfect. There are some things that didn't work as I expected, but I just needed a way to test things out and to test the UI. Sorry. Testing functions is easy, but what it becomes more difficult is when you have to test the behavior of those functions directly on the browser. So you have to test for different node elements, for different properties of those elements on the website. when you have to test for the anchors in the URL, where you have to do, well, some tests that are not just testing functions. So that's what I was using this. Well, I would be open to. I think I've heard a lot about Cypress, I think it's called, something like that. That is a testing framework that seems to be quite advanced as well for testing UIs. And well, I always wanted to use it, but I never had the time to stop and learn about it. So I just kept on using this one, and well, it did the job. And then for browser testing, I was also using browserstack.com. This allows you to not just simulate different browsers, but access them directly in real devices. So when you want to test a phone, the simulator, the SDK, is usually not very precise. It doesn't behave exactly in the same way that a real browser does. So what this website allows me, well, it's just a way to test devices and test browsers in real devices. These are actually real devices. So you can access an iPhone 11, an iPhone 11 Pro, and test on different browsers in there, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, and then see the behavior. So this website was something that helped me quite a lot, especially in order to reproduce problems that developers were having using Fullpage. Because if they tell me that they have a problem using it on an Android device under specific operative system and specific browser, then I have an iPhone with me. I don't have access to Android. I cannot test in there, and this was the way that I managed to reproduce those things and to keep on improving the framework. I still miss some things in here. For example, I was never able to reproduce things in I think it was like a touch screen in Windows devices, as well as, well, sometimes when you access these browsers, you don't have access to the console, so you have to do ugly things. You have to actually create like a fixed element on the screen, and then you have to output their values whenever you need, because you don't have access to the console. So it can become a bit tricky to test things in different devices, especially in phones and touchscreen computers. Let's see. And then, well, I had to keep on reinventing things, not only the wheel, but also other kind of things. So, for example, keyboard accessibility. We also get it from granted when we make a website. Maybe you don't realize about it, maybe you don't use it quite a lot, but you can use the keyboard to navigate it. You can use the spacebar, you can use the arrow keys, you can use the page up and down, the home and end, you can use the tab, and then you can use the shift together with all of the previous ones. So if you use shift and spacebar, you would scroll up instead of scrolling down. If you use shift and shift and tab, then you would tap to the previous focusable element instead of to the next one. So these are things that I also had to take into account when making these kind of things. And in this case, the most difficult for me was dealing with tabs, but I'll explain that later on. And of course, there are many other things that don't work whenever you disable the scroll bar of the website. So when you, like I was saying before, we are using in Fullpage CSS3 animations. We're using the translate 3D property on the wrapper element, and this way we can simulate the scroll of the website, but there is no actual scroll. So the problem with this is there is no scroll event getting fired, and this is gonna complicate things a bit more. Like you cannot use standard lazy load libraries because they are not gonna work. You cannot use parallax effects because they won't work. So one of the solutions that I created on Fullpage was allowing people to also use the scroll bar to solve these issues. But some people still, they prefer not to use the scroll bar because using translate 3D animations, the page is gonna be smoother. So I had to also implement some lazy load techniques for images, for videos, for iframes, autoplay and post media, like I said before. And then you also need to, well, in this case, some people wanted the browser history to behave like every section to behave as a different page. So if you click back, you could go to the previous section. So I also had to implement that, as well as endless scroll. People, when they use sliders, which they are very used to, many of them, they have this ability of endlessly scroll the slide. So whenever you reach the last element, the last item on the slide, and then you keep on scrolling the same direction, you will go back to the first one. So I was also implementing these kind of techniques in full page. One for endless vertical scroll, the other one for endless horizontal one. And well, these things, you don't realize about the complexity of these things unless you try to start making them. And some people say, well, full page is just a scrolling library. That's very easy to do. You just listen to the wheel event and you do this and that. But then there are all these things that you have to take into account if you want to make something really useful for everybody, not just for your own little purpose, and make it quite powerful as well at the same time. The tab was a tricky one for me. Got me, I think the issue was open for, I'm not sure if 2 or 3 years in GitHub, until I managed to came up with a proper solution. So one day I just sit down and I thought, okay, well, let's rethink this again. This cannot be that difficult. And then I started looking into Google, and I found a Google article that was explaining how to deal with tabs when you open a model. So when you open a model in a website and you tab the elements in there, you don't want the tab to focus on an element that is outside the model. So Google had an article about this. I'm not sure why. I just found it, and then the solution was, well, let me first of all explain the problem. So the problem with full page is that we don't have a scroll bar again. So when we don't have a scroll bar, and you have one input in one section, and then in another section above, you have another input, or below, well, whatever. You just, if you tap, the browser behavior is going to be focused automatically the next focusable element. And in this case, they will focus it. But then, of course, we didn't perform the translate, the transformation, the translate 3D transformation on our element. So that breaks things. And there's no way for us to detect when the website was a scroll, because that scroll is not firing the scroll event, is not changing the top property or the scroll top property of the page. So it's kind of like a mystery. You just scroll there, it focuses it, but nothing gets triggered, and there's no way to detect it. So the solution to this was to prevent the default tab when there are no focusable elements on the section, or and then to allow the default otherwise. So for example, if we're in a section that doesn't have focusable elements and you hit tab, then nothing should happen. And if there are one focusable element, then that one should get focused. But if we click on tab again and there's nothing else, then we should prevent the default tab. So first of all, we will have to look for all focusable elements on the website. So you have to look for text, you have to look for not text, sorry, inputs. You have to look for text areas, you have to look for checkboxes, you have to look for drop downs, you have to look for I'm not sure if even iframes can be focusable. So I got this list of focusable elements from the Google article that I found. And then based on that, I was able to determine if there were focusable elements on the section or not. And then once you reach the last focusable element on the section, in this case, what I decided to do is just prevent the tab, so nothing happens. You can only focus elements within the section. But then it also gets more complicated. What if you have a fixed header that is not inside the section, but it has focusable elements on it? Should you allow the tab? Should you not allow it? So, well, at the end, I managed to deal with these situations. It might not still be perfect under some other situations, but I think it's quite good now. But it was a tricky one, and it's another example of something that I had to reinvent that usually people don't take into account. I also wanted to. Oh, I think I forgot to put this on the index. I wanted to talk about how when the work when you develop a library doesn't just finish when you create it and you publish it. Then there's a lot of work behind it that needs to be done in order to keep on improving the library or making it more appealing for people, or even just giving the impression that it's getting updated every day and it's not abandoned. So well, here are a few pictures. This, like I mentioned before, 3,400 issues that I had to manually close in GitHub. Then we have Stack Overflow as well, where I was answering more than 1,000 questions as well. And then we have pull requests that we have to check from time to time. So in this case, I had to close 447 pull requests. Many of them probably were not merged. The problem with pull requests is that it's very easy to make them, but it's not as easy to merge them and make sure that they are not going to break anything. In this case, I not only have to check that they are not going to break anything within full page, but I also have to check that they're not going to break anything within the paid extensions of full page. Those extensions are not open source, so this complicates things a bit for me, because even the person who made the pull request, they cannot check this by themselves. And of course, also having a library implies making it easier for people to understand how to use it and to reproduce issues and to make them realize what they can achieve using the library. So in this case, I was also creating tens and tens of examples in CodePen. So they can look at the code, they can play with it in there, and I can point them to those examples directly from the documentation. Some other things you have to do, you have to document stuff. As I said before, in this case, I decided to document everything in GitHub. So I have like a huge document with all the options and stuff. I'm planning to, at some point, take it outside GitHub, improve it a bit, add some better search bar and so on. So I translated it to 6 different languages. Well, obviously it wasn't me. I only did to Spanish and to English. And then I had other people that I paid to make translations to Korean, Chinese, Russian. And then there was a very nice guy who offered me to translate it for free to French. I also translated the website into 5 different languages. The reason for that is because I saw many people coming from countries like Korea or Russian on my Google Analytics. So then I thought, let's try to provide these people with a better documentation, a better website, and see if this way they adopt it more and it's easier for them to use. Because otherwise, English is not really spoken in the same way in every country, and I think some countries can struggle with it. So making it easier for them is also important. I create some video tutorials as well. I haven't created as much as I would like to. I'm thinking perhaps of making some courses on that. But well, I have like 4 or 5 or 6 videos on YouTube. And I think they were especially very important at the beginning. Some people, they prefer the documentation. Other people, they just prefer to see a video, see how the guy does it. And then, this way different people have different ways of learning. So something that I had in mind when making full page is that I wanted to make it really easy for people to use this library, because I'm more of a front-end guy. Well, actually, I was what they call back-end developer when I was working in the UK. Sorry, not back-end, full stack developer. So I had to do a bit of both. But whenever I, especially dealing with back-end, I think the documentation was kind of always a bit difficult for me to tackle, because I think the more back-end you go, the more ugly and the more difficult it is to follow the documentation, at least from my point of view. And I'm the guy that doesn't like to read something in the documentation and in a way that, you know, they expect you to know a lot about the language or a lot about the way of dealing with this kind of frameworks or the way of dealing with the language. So when making a full page, I try to state things very clear in the documentation, so anybody with a very basic level of JavaScript would be able to understand how to use it. That's why I was also putting examples everywhere and just specifying things as much as I could, because I think it's important to make it easy for people to use something. Because sometimes we don't realize, but people using these things, they are maybe not masters at JavaScript. They are just making a website and they want to add some cool effects and they just want to get a plugin, plug it into their website and make it work. And well, I created the documentation with this in mind. I also had to answer thousands of emails, few tweets here and there, and well, and then keep up to date with things. So for example, you probably are aware that there's nowadays there's a CSS feature called CSS Snap, and well, quite a few things. Like sometimes the browsers, they just update something. Chrome updates itself, and then it makes the website crash, or it makes the website throw an error, or things like that. So you have to always keep up to date in order to fix these kind of issues, or sometimes even report bugs. I had a couple of issues that they were not really issues on full page, but issues on the browser itself, on Chrome, on Safari, on WebKit. And sometimes I had to open an issue about it on their issues tracker and wait for it to be fixed. With CSS snaps, I tried to also add it into full page because I think it's a very nice feature that I want to adopt at some point. But when I tried to do so, it wasn't ready yet. Chrome had a bug. I reported it in multiple places, and there was no way to fix it. So I had to step back and wait for a better implementation of the feature. Also, not every feature is available for every browser. So it's not that I'm waiting for every browser to adopt them, but sometimes you need a way to know when it's available, when it's not. So you have to check these things and see if it's worth it. And now I wanted to speak a bit about fullsnap.io. What is this? Well, so fullsnap is basically an idea that I had about creating an editor for full page. Basically, when people create full page websites, sometimes they send me emails with them. They want me to check for errors, or they want, they want me. Well, sometimes they just show them to me directly, so because they are so proud of them or something. And what I realized is that many websites, they don't look very nice. And I thought, well, maybe there's an easy way to also make it easier for these people to create something beautiful without, having them to know how to code much. So I had this idea about creating this editor that was the initial idea was to make it quite simple to use and quite basic. I'm not expecting to create a webflow. I'm not expecting to reproduce weeks, but something a bit more limited, but still that can be used in order to create some nice websites. And well, I just want to give a quick overview about it. I'm not going to speak too much about it because we don't have the time. But this is a project that I've been focusing on since the start of since COVID, basically, since around February or March. And I'm using Knockout for it, which will surprise a lot of you guys. Maybe you don't know even about it. So I'm not using React, I'm not using Vue, I'm not using Angular, I'm not using these fancy frameworks. I'm using Knockout. The reason for that is because I started this project like 4 or 5 years ago, I think. And at that time, those frameworks were not popular enough, and I was using Knockout on my daily job. So I was quite happy with Knockout. It was easy for me, and then I just started using it here. And then whenever I took this project back again this year, I thought, well, let's first of all validate the idea, see if this is worth it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time rewriting all that I did. I don't want to spend a lot of time learning things that I don't know about to just test something that might not even be used by people. So I kept on using Knockout, and I think it's fine as long as it serves the purpose. If I need to change in the future for any reason, I can always just rewrite it all or hire some people to do so or whatever. But at the moment, I'm just using this, and I'm happy with it. What is this? This is, oh, I forgot to make this slide. Okay, so basically it's an editor that allows you to add different sections, different slides, and then you can modify the text, modify the images. You can have access to different media libraries. You can have access to different videos as well. It's free to try. You don't even have to create an account. You just click on the app, and you can start playing with it. And something that I think is quite powerful on it now, we added a couple of weeks ago the possibility of integrating it with different email services. So you can even use it to create a quick landing page and integrate it with services like MailChimp or SendGrid, Email Octopus, Sendinblue, whatever. So you just create the form, and then you specify the inputs that you want to send, the fields that you want to send to the service, and then it automatically adds them to the email database that you have. Soon we will be integrating as well PayPal, Gumroad, and so on. So I think it's a very powerful way of creating something quite quick. We are also adding forms, so you can. Oh, I think they're making something upstairs. Sorry if you guys listen to some sounds. I think they're refurbishing something. Something else. You can add forms. You can send those forms so people can fill those forms, and you can get notified on your email and so on. So for this, I don't know why I didn't get saved, but basically we are using Amazon services for that. We are using Amazon S3. We are using Amazon SES for the emails. We are using also Amazon CloudFront from the routine. We allow people to publish their websites in a subdomain or even in a custom domain. So we're using quite a lot of different APIs. We're using cPanel. We are using Cloudflare. We will provide people with SSL, with CDN, and it allows people to export things as well. You can create a website, and then you can decide to export it in HTML. You can upload it directly to the website using FTP, or directly publish it to GitHub, or even directly to the custom domain that they choose. And it's quite a big project. I'm saying we because I'm not the only one working on it. I have a person helping me with this. He's called Robert. And we are both working on this. He's helping me a bit more with the backend, and I'm focusing more on the front end. But yeah, you can give it a try. It's on the beta version, so there are many things that can be and should be improved. But I think it can be something quite nice. And well, basically that's all. I also have already projects in mind, but those are not the topic of this talk. So I think it's time for the questions.
Okay, so I'm gonna start with Luis. I think is the first person. So let me just look for you in the list so I can. There you are, Luis. Okay, let me try and unmute you so you can ask your question.
Hello.
Hey.
Well, you mentioned that you started working in this library while you were working for a company, like your job. I was wondering if your fullpage.js is now your main project, you're full-time dedicated to this library, and if so, when did you took the decision to be full-time dedicated to this project? And if not, how do you divide your time with your projects?
Okay. Yeah. So, well, I didn't talk about these things on the talk because, well, I was specifically told that it would be better to make it more technical. But yeah, regarding your question, I started building it when I was working on my company, and I just did it for fun, basically, because I wanted to learn more about jQuery, and I decided to create that. I thought that this was a good excuse to make my first plugin in jQuery. So this was actually my first plugin, and I did it for free. I was working on it for free for 3 years, more or less, and then I got many people sending me emails saying that they wanted to add this feature or this other feature, or the endless scrolling, or they wanted to be able to reset the sliders whenever different things. And I got the same emails a few times. At first, I was just customizing the library for them, and telling them, okay, you give me. I was putting a price, and they were buying it. So they were buying the customization. And at some point, because they kept on asking for the same things, I thought that I could start creating some extensions. So then I thought, well, maybe I can create extensions doing these features that they are asking. I don't want to include them in the main plugin because they are going to make the code much bigger. Not everybody's going to use them. Not everybody needs them. And I can also charge for them a small amount instead of, asking for, let's put just a price here. Instead of 1,000 euros for a customization, I can sell it for 29 euros, and then see if people start buying them. So this was my first attempt to monetize Fullpage, and I started doing this like about 3 years after providing it fully for free. So since the beginning of the monetization, so it took me basically 6 months since I started monetizing it until I decided to quit my job, because it was in those 6 months when I was realizing that I was getting the same amount of money that I was getting working on my full-time job. So that was when I realized that I wanted to quit and give it a try. But I would usually suggest people to try to combine both at first, because otherwise it is a risky decision. And in my case, it wasn't risky. It was just the natural path, I think. So yeah, and regarding if I'm working full-time on this, yeah, I'm working full-time. However, not everything is about the library anymore. So I have to do a lot of different tasks all around the library. It's not just the library itself, but it's managing the users, managing the different license system that I have for the extensions. I have a backlog where I can, order, change emails or order refunds or whatever, and I had to code all of that. And then also working on the extensions that are not open source, and working on side projects as well. As well as the marketing sometimes, or even doing some articles or videos, or now also working on different things like the wrappers for Vue, React, Angular, or the plugin for WordPress. So at the end, it became a bit bigger. It's not just the library itself, but all around it. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. We have 2 more questions. I think one is pretty connected to the one you just said. But Romy, I'm gonna, if you can turn your video on. I saw, Romy, you have a question. I'm gonna find you on the list and unmute you. If you can turn the video on, that would be great. Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, go for it.
How do you manage your time fixing bugs and issues, answering people's comments and questions, or being active on Twitter as well, maintaining your current projects, and starting a new project? Like, it sounds like there's a lot of things to do for like a day or so. What?
Yeah. So, I guess you have to kind of have a plan, a daily plan. So I usually check the email every morning. I have a to-do list of things that I want to work on different things. And then I have a long-term list of things that I want to achieve every year. Perhaps I want to, release 2 new extensions, or I want to start creating a new wrapper for another framework. So I kind of put a list of all the tasks in the list, and then I prioritize them. And regarding giving support to people, now my brother is helping me giving support to people. So we have a ticket system, and now instead of me getting all the emails from people, he deals with emails, and that liberates me from a big amount of work. Usually it was an average of 1 hour, 1 hour and a half, maybe 2 hours a day dealing with those things. So now he helps me with that. And then for WordPress, I have another person that collaborates with me and help me also to deal with those issues. And then, well, I just try to check GitHub also. Well, if they create a new issue, I check it right away, and then I decide if I want to take action right now or just whenever I think about creating a new release. About the products, well, I can now focus a bit more on creating new different products, or focusing on different side projects, because full page is kind of stable now. So yeah, every 1-2 months I create a new release. I still have to answer people. I still have to fix little bugs here and there, but it's not taking me most of my time. I could say that the biggest right now I'm dedicating more time to fullsnap or to other side projects rather than full page, but I'm still maintaining full page and all around it and taking care of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now, yeah, Tomas, can you hear me?
Yeah. So the thing that I wanted to ask was, how was the process basically from, because you said that you quit your job, and I wanted to know, like, how was that transition, and when was the moment, or how did you how were you able to decide or to know that you were ready to leave your job and start living from
Yeah, well, basically, it's when I thought that this could have the potential to maintain myself, that's when I thought that I could quit my job. So 6 months prior to giving my resignation letter, is when I started selling extensions and trying to monetize full page. And after 6 months of doing so, I noticed that there was potential on this, and that I was getting the same amount that with my current salary, or almost the same. And that's when I decided that it was a good time to quit and give it a try.
Did you think, or how did you get the way to monetize this? I mean, was it instantly, or how did it evolve?
No, definitely not instantly, because I never had intentions of doing so. I was maintaining it totally for free for 3 years. I was closing issues like crazy. I was generating new releases very, very quickly, and trying to make an impact and make something really useful for others. That was my main motivation. And then is when I realized that if I also had a way to make an income out of this, then I could even create something better for people. Because at some point, when you get so many issues, so many people trying to ask you for help and stuff, you realize you cannot just be working for free as a consultant for everybody who asks. But when you start getting money out of it, then it's not free anymore. Even though you are not getting money from that specific person, you are getting money from others and so on. So I think it ends up being a win-win for all of us. And well, I think I've already answered your question.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This is very inspiring because in my case, I want to, a lot of people are interested in being an entrepreneur, and yeah, this is your story is very inspiring. So thank you so much for sharing it.
Thanks for you.
Okay, I think we have one more question. I think we can squeeze in. I mean, it's 8 p.m., but if you don't mind, Álvaro, we go over like 2-3 minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so Jorge, I'm looking for you. Sorry, on this list, it's not. Here you
Yes,
are. So if you can please turn the video on as well, that would be amazing.
Yeah, you see me.
Yep.
Thank you, Álvaro, for the talk. But I'm following your work for many years, and it's impressive how it evolved. And congratulations, the first And I was checking the repository. This is more technical question than others.
Okay.
And I'm seeing it. You keep updating the the plugin, the full page JS, but I see it is, the code is something quite old, you know, for the current standards. So you mentioned it is stable now. That's okay. I have some open source project that if it's stable, don't touch it. You know, just leave it like that, and just add some features if it's important. But it's stable. Leave it. You know. I've seen still use Globe, and it's missing some things in the repository, using IDs in CSS, probably some jQuery syntax in the JS file, and I was wondering if that's what you think. You know, as you said, it is stable. Let's keep it that. Let's build new things, new ideas that you mentioned you had, and or if you have a plan to maybe version 4, 5, or anything else to update it and make a refactory of the code to the current code, the current project that you said that works very well for you. In GoFi, I found Net for 8, you know, support that explain why still use Knockout. And I don't know what's your plans to the future of full page or other projects to make upgrading browser support and all that kind of stuff. I think I talked too much, and thank you very much for listening me.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
I was a little bit caught up, but I think you got the gist of the question, Álvaro?
I think I got the idea.
Okay,
like,
yeah. Let's give it a
try. Yeah, the code looks a bit old. That is true. But you know, when you well, I think the people when they use it, they don't really care too much of how it's coded. They just care about how it works. So yeah, code doesn't look amazing. As I said, this was my first jQuery plugin, and it has been improving among these years, and it can, of course, be improved even more. This is a full page version 3. So the big change was when I moved from version 2 to version 3. Then I was improving, few things, but I didn't want to get too crazy because I want to kind of port the jQuery version to JavaScript and see if I didn't break anything. But of course, I'm planning to release future versions, and I, of course, would like to keep on improving the code. I don't mind too much, though, about using the new ES6 syntax, because I said, as I said before, I prefer not to use transpilers. So I'm a bit more concerned about the quality of the code, how it is, how easy it can be to understand or to keep on improving it, but not too much about the syntax itself. Because you know, I don't care if I use a bar or cons or let. You know, it's kind of it's going to work the same way. I care a bit more about efficiency in terms of performance as well. You know, be careful with the kind of things that you add in events that are fired all the time, like the scroll event, or you know, how to deal with different performance issues. So yeah, performance, I care about that. I care about if it's easy to read or not, if it's easy to maintain or not, and those are the things that I care most about. But yeah, I'm definitely planning to release a new version. I don't know yet when. Definitely not this year because I'm a bit busy with other projects. But well, I keep on maintaining it, and there will be future versions for sure. Yeah.
Awesome. By the way, I like Jorge. I've also kind of looked at, been aware of kind of full page for a while now, and it's been amazing to see how it has grown. And like everyone else, I'm also super happy that you've kind of found a path from kind of side project to like the opportunity to try and kind of it's very interesting. I think generally speaking, for the people who are asking about entrepreneurship, is it's much easier to start a business when there's a pull, like when customers are pulling you to do something. It's much easier than when you have like some speculation in your mind about what customers might need. So anyways, yeah, I've seen the progression from afar, and I'm very excited about kind of how far you've gotten this, and kind of what the editor might bring for you and for the community. So, we're a little bit over time. I'm really grateful. It took us kind of back and forth to organize this. I'm really grateful you took the time to chat with us, Álvaro, and I'm very happy for you and all the progress you've made. I'm very grateful that you took the time to chat with us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was
Awesome.
great.
Awesome. So again, we're recording this, and again, if you guys are interested, I can forward kind of a YouTube link when that comes up. It'll take us a little bit to edit the video and make it look kind of nice enough to post it. So anyways, some people are chatting, making more comments, as you could probably see on the chat, Álvaro, but I'll cut it up here so it doesn't go forever. Thanks, man. Thanks for taking the time.
All right, thank you.
And thank everyone for coming. I appreciate it as well. Have a great day.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.